year ago, America fell in love with a singing janitor from Terre Haute.
Oh, Richard Goodall won, you might remember, America's Got Talent.
A middle school janitor stood.
Every season of America's Got Talent introduces singers, dancers, comedians, and performers chasing a dream. Some arrive with years of professional experience, while others step onto the stage with little more than hope and determination. But every once in a while, someone appears whose story reminds audiences that extraordinary talent can come from the most unexpected places. For millions of viewers, that person was Richard Goodall. When he first walked onto the AGT stage, he didn't look like a typical television star. Soft-spoken and humble, Goodall introduced himself as a school janitor from Terre Haute, Indiana. He explained that he had spent years cleaning classrooms and hallways while encouraging students to pursue their dreams. Now, for perhaps the first time in his own life, he had decided to chase one of his own. That simple introduction immediately connected with viewers. Unlike many contestants who arrived with impressive resumes or industry experience, Richard represented something familiar. He was an ordinary working American who had quietly carried an extraordinary passion for music. His story wasn't built around fame or celebrity. It was built around perseverance. Long before appearing on national television, Richard had become known online after a video of him singing in a school hallway gained widespread attention. His powerful voice surprised thousands of people who couldn't believe that someone with such remarkable talent had spent years working outside the music industry. Yet despite the growing attention, Richard remained remarkably grounded. He continued working, continued supporting students, and continued singing simply because he loved music. That authenticity became one of the defining qualities audiences noticed immediately. When Richard stood before the judges, there were no extravagant promises or dramatic speeches. He spoke honestly about his life, his job, and the dream he had carried for decades. It wasn't a story about overnight success. It was about finally deciding that it was never too late to take a chance. Then came the performance. As the first notes filled the theater, the atmosphere changed almost instantly. The audience, who moments earlier had been quietly listening to his introduction, became completely focused on the voice coming from a stage. His emotional delivery, combined with years of life experience behind every lyric, created a performance that resonated with both the judges and viewers at home. The applause that followed wasn't simply for a great vocal performance. It was for the journey that brought him there. In the days after the audition aired, social media filled with messages celebrating Richard's story. Many people described him as proof that talent can remain hidden for years before finally receiving the opportunity it deserves. Others admired his humility, noting that despite the sudden attention, he never appeared interested in becoming a celebrity for its own sake. Then came a wave of dramatic online headlines. Some claimed Richard had finally admitted a secret that everyone had suspected. Others hinted at hidden truths behind his AGT success, or suggested there was far more to his story than audiences had been told. But were any of those claims actually true? The answer is more interesting and far more inspiring than many sensational headlines suggest. Because Richard Goodall's greatest revelation wasn't a shocking confession. It was something far simpler. A reminder that dreams don't come with an expiration date, and that sometimes the people who inspire millions are the ones who never expected the spotlight in the first place. Long before millions of viewers watched Richard Goodall on America's Got Talent, he was known for something much simpler. Every weekday, he reported to work as a janitor at a middle school in Terre Haute, Indiana. While students hurried between classes and teachers prepared lessons, Richard quietly went about his responsibilities, never imagining that one day the entire country would know his name. But there was one thing his co-workers and students had always known. Richard loved to sing. Music had been part of his life for decades. Whether he was cleaning hallways or working after school hours, he often found himself singing favorite songs, not to attract attention, but simply because it brought him joy. For him, music wasn't a career, it was a lifelong passion. Then, something unexpected happened. A video of Richard singing Journey's Don't Stop Believin' Inside the School began circulating online. The recording wasn't produced by a television network or a record label. It was an ordinary video capturing an extraordinary voice. Within days, thousands of people were watching. Soon, the number grew into the millions. Comments poured in from viewers who couldn't believe that someone with such remarkable vocal ability had spent years working as a school janitor instead of performing on major stages. Many called him an undiscovered talent. Others described him as proof that incredible gifts can be found in unexpected places. Yet despite the sudden attention, Richard's life didn't change overnight. He continued showing up for work. He continued encouraging students. And he continued approaching life with the same humility that had always defined him. That reaction impressed many people just as much as his singing. In an era where viral fame often changes lives instantly, Richard remained grounded. Friends and co-workers described him as someone who appreciated the encouragement, but never allowed the attention to change who he was. Eventually, new opportunities began appearing. The viral video introduced Richard to audiences far beyond Indiana, and before long, he found himself presented with an opportunity that few aspiring singers ever receive: the chance to audition for America's Got Talent. Even then, there were no guarantees. Thousands of talented performers audition for AGT every season, hoping for a chance to stand before the judges. Many never make it to the televised rounds. Others perform well, but struggle to stand out in a competition filled with exceptional talent. Richard understood the challenge ahead. He wasn't competing against local performers anymore. He was competing on one of the world's biggest entertainment stages. That reality would intimidate almost anyone. Yet Richard carried something many contestants spend years trying to develop: authenticity. He wasn't trying to create a television character or manufacture an emotional story. He simply shared the truth about his life: a hard-working school employee who had loved singing for decades and finally decided to take a chance on a dream. That honesty resonated with viewers. People weren't just cheering for an incredible voice. They were cheering for someone who reminded them that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things when opportunity finally arrives. As excitement surrounding his AGT appearance grew, so did the internet rumors. Videos began appearing with dramatic titles suggesting Richard had hidden secrets, made shocking confessions, or revealed something the public had long suspected. But when examining Richard's verified public interviews, a very different picture emerges. The most consistent message he has shared isn't about secret revelations. It's about gratitude. Gratitude for his family. Gratitude for his co-workers. Gratitude for the students who encouraged him. And gratitude for finally receiving an opportunity he never expected would come. Perhaps that's the real reason so many people connected with his story. It wasn't built on scandal. It wasn't built on controversy. It was built on perseverance, humility, and the courage to believe that it's never too late to pursue a lifelong dream. By the time Richard Goodall stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, many viewers knew him only as the singing janitor. It was a nickname that reflected his humble profession, but barely hinted at the years of passion and dedication behind his voice. Standing in front of thousands of people inside the theater, and millions more watching from home, Richard faced the biggest performance of his life. Unlike many contestants who arrived with flashy entrances or dramatic stage productions, Richard kept things simple. He introduced himself with the same humility that had defined his journey. He spoke about working as a school custodian, about loving music for most of his life, and about finally deciding to take a chance on a dream he had carried for decades. There was something immediately relatable about him. He wasn't trying to impress the audience with confidence or celebrity. He was simply being himself. Then the music began. Richard chose Journey's classic anthem, "Don't Stop Believin'," a song already associated with his viral school performance. It was a bold decision. The song is one of the most recognizable rock anthems ever recorded, and performing it on national television would invite inevitable comparisons to the original. But Richard wasn't trying to imitate anyone. He sang with sincerity. Every lyric reflected someone who understood perseverance, hope, and the courage to keep believing even when success seemed unlikely. Within moments, the audience responded enthusiastically. People rose to their feet. The judges smiled. The atmosphere inside the theater changed from curiosity to celebration. By the time the final note echoed through the auditorium, it was clear that something memorable had just happened. The judges praised not only Richard's voice, but also the authenticity behind the performance. Rather than relying on elaborate stage effects, he allowed his life experience and emotional connection to the music to carry the moment. That authenticity became one of the defining themes of his AGT journey. Then came one of the biggest surprises of the night. Judge Heidi Klum was so moved by Richard's performance that she pressed the golden buzzer, sending him directly to the live shows. Golden confetti filled the stage as the audience erupted into applause. For Richard, it was more than a television moment. It represented decades of quiet determination, finally receiving national recognition. As confetti rained down around him, the emotion on his face reflected years of hard work, patience, and belief, finally leading to an unforgettable opportunity. The golden buzzer quickly became one of the most talked about moments of the season. Across social media, viewers praised Richard not only for his remarkable voice, but also for the inspiring message behind his journey. Many commented that his story reminded them not to give up on their own dreams. Others admired the humility he continued to show even after receiving one of the competition's highest honors. Yet alongside the overwhelming support came another wave of sensational headlines. Some claimed Richard had finally revealed a secret about his success. Others suggested there was hidden drama behind the scenes of America's Got Talent. But when examining Richard's verified interviews and public appearances, a much simpler story emerges. He consistently credits the people who supported him throughout his life. He speaks warmly about his coworkers, his community, and the students who encourage him to keep singing. Rather than portraying himself as someone who suddenly became famous, Richard often describes himself as grateful for an opportunity he never expected to receive. Perhaps that's why his story resonated so deeply. It wasn't about celebrity. It wasn't about controversy. It was about hope. A man who spent years working behind the scenes finally stepped into the spotlight, not because he demanded attention, but because his talent eventually became impossible to ignore. And that message reached far beyond the AGT stage. For millions watching at home, Richard Goodall became proof that extraordinary opportunities can arrive at unexpected moments in life. Receiving the golden buzzer is often described as a dream come true. For many contestants, it is the moment they realize that years of hard work have finally been recognized on one of the world's biggest talent stages. For Richard Goodall, however, it was also the beginning of a completely new challenge. Almost overnight, the school janitor from Indiana became one of the most recognizable contestants of the season. News outlets shared his story. Social media clips of his audition were viewed millions of times. Fans from across the country sent messages of support, congratulating him on proving that dreams don't have an age limit. Yet despite the sudden attention, Richard remained remarkably consistent. In interviews following his audition, he continued to describe himself as an ordinary person who simply loved to sing. He spoke with gratitude about the opportunity America's Got Talent had given him and frequently thanked the people who had encouraged him long before television audiences knew his name. That humility became one of the reasons people continued supporting him. Many contestants become known primarily for their performances. Richard became known for his character as much as his voice. As the competition moved into the live shows, the pressure increased dramatically. The golden buzzer guaranteed him a place in the next stage, but it didn't guarantee victory. Every remaining contestant was exceptionally talented, and each live performance would now be judged not only by the panel, but also by millions of viewers voting from home. The stakes had never been higher. Unlike the audition rounds, there would be little room for mistakes. Contestants had to select the right songs, deliver memorable performances, and continue connecting emotionally with audiences week after week. Richard understood that expectations had changed. After his unforgettable audition, viewers expected another extraordinary performance. Living up to that expectation is often one of the hardest parts of any talent competition. Many contestants struggle under the weight of sudden popularity. Richard approached it differently. Rather than trying to completely reinvent himself, he stayed true to the qualities that had earned America's attention in the first place: honesty, humility, and heartfelt performances. His approach reflected something many successful entertainers eventually discover. Audiences don't just remember technical perfection. They remember authenticity. People connect with performers who make them feel something genuine. Throughout the competition, Richard continued choosing songs that reflected his personality rather than simply trying to impress with difficult vocal techniques. Every performance reinforced the image audiences had already embraced: a hard-working man who had waited decades for one opportunity and intended to make the most of it. Meanwhile, another narrative continued spreading online. Videos with dramatic titles claimed Richard had finally admitted hidden truths about his career or revealed secrets that producers supposedly kept from viewers. But the verified record tells a different story. Richard's public interviews remained remarkably consistent. He spoke about his appreciation for his family, his co-workers, his community, and the students who inspired him to keep believing in himself. There were no shocking confessions, no hidden scandals, no dramatic revelations. Instead, his message was refreshingly simple. He believed that talent should never be limited by age. He believed that ordinary people deserve extraordinary opportunities. And he believed that it's never too late to pursue a lifelong dream. Ironically, that ordinary message became extraordinary. In a world often dominated by controversy and sensational headlines, Richard Goodall reminded audiences that authenticity can still capture national attention. Perhaps that's why his story resonated far beyond the AGT stage. People didn't just see a talented singer. They saw someone who represented millions of hard-working individuals whose dreams had been postponed, but never abandoned. His journey became a reminder that success doesn't always arrive when you're young. Sometimes it comes after decades of patience, persistence, and quiet determination. And when it finally arrives, it can change everything. By the time Richard Goodall reached the final stages of America's Got Talent, he had become much more than a contestant. He had become a symbol of perseverance. Millions of viewers weren't simply tuning in to hear him sing. They were following the story of a man who had spent decades working quietly behind the scenes before finally receiving the opportunity of a lifetime. As the competition progressed, Richard continued delivering heartfelt performances that reflected the same authenticity audiences had admired from the beginning. Then came the moment every contestant dreams about. After weeks of live performances and public voting, Richard Goodall was crowned the winner of America's Got Talent Season 19, earning the grand prize and completing one of the most inspiring journeys in the show's history. For many viewers, it felt like the perfect ending. But for Richard, it was only the beginning of a brand new chapter. Suddenly, the school janitor, who had once gone viral singing in a hallway, was being invited to interviews, public appearances, and major entertainment events. People everywhere wanted to know the same thing. What was the secret behind his success? That's when sensational headlines began appearing online. Some claimed Richard had finally admitted what everyone suspected. Others hinted at hidden truths behind his victory. Yet, when listening to Richard's actual interviews, a very different picture emerges. His admission wasn't shocking. It wasn't controversial. It wasn't even about fame. Instead, Richard repeatedly shared something far more meaningful. He admitted that for many years, he never believed an opportunity like this would happen to him. He has openly spoken about loving music throughout his life while continuing to work an ordinary job, because supporting himself came first. Rather than seeing that as a failure, he viewed it as part of his journey. That honesty resonated with countless people. Many adults quietly carry dreams they've postponed because of work, family responsibilities, or life's unexpected challenges. Richard's story reminded them that delaying a dream doesn't necessarily mean giving it up forever. Another theme appears consistently throughout his public interviews: gratitude. Richard regularly thanks the students who encouraged him, the co-workers who believed in him, his community in Indiana,